This week I had to do a paper on the political bias in the media, and what I kind of learned that there was not only one type of bias, but there was 16 types of bias. They were spin, unsubstantiated claims, opinion statements presented as facts, sensationalism with emotionalism, mudslinging, mind reading slant, flawed logic, bias by omission of source, attribution, bias by story choice and placement, subjective qualifying adjectives, word choice, negative bias, photo bias, elite and publicist bias, and some final notes on the bias. In my paper, I've chosen 2 separate articles to go by and talk about the different types of bias. The one article I did with Trump, it actually had a few different biases in it that I thought was very interesting, that, not only could you use bias in your argument, but you could use multiple different types of bias in one single argument. It was also very interesting to read the Gallup reports, that they kind of had different fluctuating numbers. One report said 72% of Americans didn't feel that the news source was very honest anymore, and there was another one that said 62% were biased, and that was more based on TV versus an increase when you go into social media. And as we know, social media aren't actual fact checkers and news reporters to have all the evidence. It's just kind of people basing their biased opinions and kind of posting whatever they like, and they may think they know all the information, but they have not checked or credited any of their sources. So that reason why the Gallup said it was actually higher. We were up to 80% bias when it went to social media versus 62%, which is a great substantial jump, almost 18%. In the first article I did, it's relating to Trump. He's talking about the mass immigration issue that we have in the United States right now. Some people are not liking the way that it's handled, and they were spinning this article to essentially say that Trump was racist to get rid of the people and do mass deportation. And Trump's issue was more based on the legal aspect of, if you came here legally, it was okay, but it's not okay to come here illegally, and all of those illegal immigrants are essentially taking money and services that we have for our general public and people away. So there was 2 different poles of the argument where they were emphasizing more discriminatory and racial bias against the people, and using more stronger terms. In that article, they were using more an emotional bias, a lot of slant terms towards him, as I explained in my paper. Some of the emotional is how they use their words, where if you're going to get kind of a rise out of somebody, those trigger words. Those were kind of some of the things that were specified in the article. More on raw racism. They were saying things like throwback to a much darker period. Obviously, nobody wants to go somewhere, that's not positive. They want to see as a positive future, not going backwards. Things like chanting, send them back. It kind of made the reference that all Trump voters were automatically having the same opinion, which, as we know, everybody has their own opinion. Even if you're in one group of politics, you can still have different opinions on minor issues within the political party. So that's kind of that article. I also did a second article that was called "The Black Church has a Gen Z issue. They don't come into our building anymore." While they did talk about forms of social media and other ways that they've kind of revamped since COVID on getting new patrons into their charter, they kind of more wanted to spin and talk that the reason they were so enraged or worried about the Gen Z population coming into church was not the actual church aspect and about the faith and their religion being preached to these young Black patrons, but it was more based on that they are losing their political power, and that how most black voters are Democratic, and even if they're conservative, if they go to church, they'll still vote Democratic. So they were very worried about their vote and their political strings and their power. This article didn't really shelter any of the positives and the momentum and the future goals that they could have, or gains that they've kind of had within getting the social media or the Zoom calls or the video services that they may be holding. They also didn't talk about if this was just locally an issue in their state or it was also other states as well. Living from multiple states, I know up north, church is not as much a big issue, and you don't see as many churches driving around as you do here in Georgia. So I do think it is subjective to the area. And this one was talking more about slanted media, that they were heavy on one-sided negative views. So in conclusion, I tried to pick different articles that spoke different relationships and different things based on different culture and events that are going on within our society of today's. And then in my article, I linked all the hyperlinks, and I also put a works cited at the end so you can see where I got all my sources for the media bias. Thanks, everybody.